Okay, we've had two episodes talking about these internal calculators and how what is being weighted, how do you make decisions and to perform your actions in life. It's a good way if you can think about that. We map this out starting with sensation, sensory processing here. So sensation, perception, and sensory processing, essentially the same thing. We built what leads up to the action, to what you're doing in life. And this is where things like your core beliefs, your phenotype, your personality, and so forth are this is what's kind of behind the hood, if you will, if you like that kind of language. This is how you are created and how you become who you are. We started with the sensory. We use vision here because we just have a lot of different episodes about vision, and maybe it was easier to understand the visual processing. We have these two pathways from the retina, one to the superior colliculus, that machine like structure that's forcing your head and your eye movements to do what it does. Pay attention to how often you orient your head to different things in your environment and how much your eye gaze moves. What are you looking at? Do you even know? And then the superior colliculus, that machine like structure, it's very powerful. We'll speak up to the medial dorsal part of the thalamus here, and then it will go to the frontal eye fields. Okay, remember, this is a distal connection. And this is also from the thalamus to the frontal eye fields, is where that corollary discharge is being made and sent. Pretty good episode about the corollary discharge. It's very underrated. People don't know we do this. It's a prediction of the action that you're about to do before you do it. The brain knows. And then we go to the parietal, and then it'll kind of speak back down to the thalamus and hit the V2. Okay. That is immediate eye gaze. That is immediate attention to the environment. Now, if you want to sustain eye gaze, if you want to concentrate or focus on something, whatever it is, the parietal can speak back over. So these are bidirectionals, frontal eye fields to the thalamus, strong bidirectional connection. And then if you're orienting to something, to the environment, the parietal will speak over to the orbital frontal cortex here, and this is where kind of your state is being mapped out. There's a lot of inputs going into this orbital frontal cortex, but we're just using vision to kind of modulate our attention. And if we want to really remember this kind of equation here, sensory and state will kind of go into how you're feeling, how you're going to provide energy to that task, whatever it is you're doing. So that's why state is a little bit offset here. Okay, these states, your bodily states, how you feel, what you're after in life, how much motivation and so forth. All of this is involved with this state. Okay, and then we mapped out value. Okay, so we'll jump to value, which is the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. We called it the scoreboard on the first episode. This is a very powerful hub, okay? But first, let's reverse engineer that a bit because what goes into value here, you can see it here. The board's kind of full right now. Value is the delta of reward minus cost, okay? So that will determine your value. Reward is the medial part of the orbital frontal cortex. Generally speaking, these are just generally speaking. It's all about neurocorrelates, not necessarily the region. But this region, these regions, this is like a main function of them. So the medial orbital frontal cortex, which is sometimes called part of the medial prefrontal cortex, okay? And then the insula. I'm not going to say too much about that because the insula, we've covered it. And if you want to know more about the insula, there's many episodes about it. So these would kind of determine the value of this ventral medial prefrontal cortex, okay? In rodent models, a lot of good research on rodents, of course, or mice, infralimbic. You can see it as infralimbic. Okay, they have slightly different brain regions. And then we got to the cost, or And then we got to the control, okay, the anterior cingulate cortex. This is also pretty typically discussed in the podcast. It's a very powerful region. And kind of it's conflict monitoring, monitoring risk reward, error detection. If you're making errors, how much control do you need over the environment? How much control do you need as a person, as a living organism, to accomplish that task, to get what you're trying to accomplish, or do what you have to do? So this is control, and I'm going to tell you, you don't like uncertainty. So whenever you have uncertainty, the ACC is kind of working in overdrive. And what we're going to talk about today is going to be heavily involved here, okay? And then all of that kind of leads up to the policy, because you're going to do what you do. This carries out the action in the dorsal striatum. Remember, from the basal ganglia episodes, motivation lives here, and you don't define motivation. Everything mapping out to the dorsal striatum, all those inputs that's coming in with these states and values and the neuromodulators, which is mostly episode 2, is going to determine what the dorsal striatum does. If you want to or not, it doesn't matter. If it's healthy or unhealthy, it doesn't matter. Whatever the inputs coming into the dorsal striatum is what you're going to do. Remember, it's the input systems to the basal ganglia, okay? The go, no-go areas. Okay, so we kind of built up this policy and determining this is what you do. Some big takeaways here is when value with that reward minus cost, reward is higher, you're going to repeat that task. This is something that you're going to want to repeat. The brain will want to repeat that, whether you want to or not. If the cost is high, you're going to want to avoid that. Remember, because this is kind of the equation of life. How do you maximize net benefits? That's what the brain is trying to do, maximize net benefits and value while minimizing uncertainty, because uncertainty is costly. Metabolic bank accountant, remember. How much energy and effort am I going to have to do to fulfill this task, to complete this task? And this is where thoughts get powerful. You can just control your life over thoughts. I don't want to do that. I don't have the energy. I can't. What this is trying to do with the maximizing benefits and value and minimizing uncertainty is to minimize the metabolic cost. We're trying to minimize metabolic cost. That way the brain can satisfy its main goal, is to conserve and allocate energy properly so that the living organism can survive. Okay, so we're going to talk about anxiety. Okay, we're going to talk about, because this is a podcast on autism, we're going to talk about autism and anxiety, and it's going to be easy. That equation, autism and anxiety, because we're going to use socialness, is going to be easy for you to follow. But said differently, whether it's autism and socialness or whatever, you can put yourself into any stimuli, any stimulus or thought or environment, and you can just plug and play this. If you like that kind of figuratively speech, you can just plug and play what is weighting your value in life with the reward that you're doing, the rewards that you get for doing the actions that you do, and that cost. Remember, when the reward is high, you're going to repeat that. When the cost is high, you're going to avoid that. That's why change is hard. Change is hard. So with autism and anxiety and the socialness, obviously we're right here. Socialness is very costly. Okay, it's overwhelming sensation. Remember from this green, the autistic phenotype is getting bombarded with sensory processing here. You see many episodes about how inputs coming in through the senses are flooded versus so-called typicals who generalize it and just form a gist of the situation and then sends that information in. The EI is a big part of that. Okay. So the autistic phenotype is being bombarded with sensory and that delayed corollary discharge as well. Okay, so it's harder to navigate and orient to the environment. Remember, the superior colliculus is in the mesencephalon. Okay, the mesencephalon has three main roles. It's sensory integration, motor movement, and orienting the attention of the living organism to the environment. Send your attention outward. The autistic phenotype, autism means self, goes inward. Okay, so some other things with socialness is the confusing language. Language is very confusing, and it's not limited to the autistic phenotype. Language is very confusing. You can follow 44 Veritas on X, and I promise you, he's going to convince you that autism is um, sending back to before the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11, 1 through 9. The autistic phenotype, the way that we communicate is black and white. Now, it's a lot easier to kind of understand black and white versus all that gray area, all of this meaning and things, and the layers of complications, especially with the English language. Okay, so the confusing language. And there's difficulty with speech. Okay, the autistic phenotype has difficult speech processing. Speech and language are huge. And socialness requires a lot of speech and language. Simple, right? And then the neuroplasticity. The more you do these things, the more you're going to repeat them, whether it's repeating avoidance or repeating action. We're going to talk about action. Stress and action are anti-correlated. Stress and action are anti-correlated. Anti-anxiety, if you want to control your anxiety, the ACC here, which is this right here in red, remember the cingulate wraps around white matter tract, so it's very powerful, okay? It's part of the medial prefrontal cortex. These areas right here is the medial prefrontal cortex deep inside near the midline, okay? Anti-anxiety will require control over the situation, okay? The ACC will exert power over situations. So the ACC, if you remember a previous episode with the medial prefrontal cortex, so the ventral medial is in there as well, and sometimes the medial orbital frontal cortex, okay, is in there as well. We map that out. One way that you can think about the medial prefrontal cortex is adaptive responses. How much skill sets do you have? How much control do you have over various situations? That's adaptive responses. Whenever you are navigating the world with confidence or with ability, I should say, and you can handle situations, nothing seems to kind of upset you and stress you, okay? You are using these adaptive responses, and the prefrontal cortex will kind of input the action system, the basal ganglia, and suppress all of these subcortical, powerful limbic areas, like the amygdala here, and these other limbic areas, like the VTA with the dopamine, and the nucleus accumbens will be involved. But whenever you can exert the prefrontal cortex, especially the medial part, and kind of orchestrate these areas. Remember, the basal ganglia is go and no go. When the input is coming in from the prefrontal cortex, the better off you're going to be, instead of these lower, powerful emotional systems leading. Okay, so let's go ahead and erase this here, because I don't think we'll need it. I hate to erase it though. There's so much on there. It's gone. It's gone. It was a little offset anyways. The cerebellum and the eyes were off. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but the message was still conveyed. That's what matters. The message was still conveyed, okay? So we're going to stamp this prediction here with various repeats and avoids, okay? Good things and bad things, okay? So as you do actions, okay, you're learning, remember, because this is what this is all about, learning. So the equation is you're doing actions and you're learning how to do them with certainty, hopefully. Well, it doesn't matter because you're doing actions and you're learning. Is it a good thing with high reward or is it a bad thing? Very costly. So, and then you're learning to repeat that. Repetition. Humans love repetition. Remember, we love habits. This is what this is kind of all about. We we love habits because it automates the response. We don't have to think about it, and it conserves biological energy like no other. But remember, doesn't matter if it's healthy or unhealthy. Doesn't matter if you want to or you don't want to. Okay? And then once you're repeating things, that neuroplasticity really takes charge. That's what the autism and anxiety episode kind of highlighted. That was like the biggest takeaway there. As we grow through the lifespan, and these social situations are complicated from the get-go. Neuroplasticity is going to take over. We're going to start stamping these. That's complicated. That's complicated. That's complicated. I don't want to do that. Plus, this neurobiology and the central nervous system, insults and toxins and so forth, the way it's shaped, makes us inward anyways. So this is neuroplasticity. Learning plus repetition equals neuroplasticity, okay? We've talked about morphology. It's a strengthening of connections. The brain doesn't want to work, it just wants to respond. So when connections are larger, it's easier for the brain just to hit that signal more and more. Remember, we drew this out with the OCD and the basal ganglia, okay? We took a specific cell from the putamen in the dorsal striatum, and we extracted that specific cell out, and then we highlighted a specific spine. Remember, these are medium spiny neurons. That spines are a little bit larger. We extracted a specific spine, and that spine will receive a connection, and that connection will mean the same thing every time. Okay, so as it hits and fires more, and where it's coming from upstream, or the afferents, it's going to repeat that because it's going to grow in size, and that's called morphology. Okay, so morphology will happen, and that's the connections. Okay, I'll just draw that out right here. Let's just say these are connections. Information is coming down through here upstream. It gets to the end of this, and then it's going to connect to the different cell, the next cell. Okay, and then the little synaptic cleft here, it's about 10 nanometers, so it's really small, will send signals. But as you repeat things, those connections grow in size. The brain doesn't have to worry about those signals connecting and being executed, right? This is all about those neural correlates. Okay? And then you will repeat this, repeat this, repeat this, and it doesn't matter what the outcome is here, repeating because the reward is high, or avoiding, repeated avoidance because it's too costly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's going to grow that in size, and you're going to become that. This is who you are. Remember, we drew out the mini columns and layer 2 and layer 3 of the cortex. This is where these will kind of live and start. Remember, from the mini columns, signals come in from the thalamus to layer 4. Layer 4 will speak up to layers 2 and 3 to get the information based off of you. What you do in this situation, it's pulling from that, and then layers 2 and 3 will speak back down to layers 5 and 6 and then orchestrate. It's not that complicated, okay? So as you're doing these things that you want to or you don't want to, you're developing yourself. Okay, so how do you change it? Because change is hard. Absolutely. This is going to be a big thing here because we love seesaws. I love seesaws right here. So action, doing things, regardless of this, you're going to have to wade through and battle this friction here if you want to change. You can do it. You're going to resist it. But you're going to have to take a lot of effort and understand like this metabolic cost is not likely going to hurt you. It just feels funky. Okay, so and stress, action and stress, or stress and anxiety, doesn't matter, are anti-correlated. That's a seesaw. Anti-correlated just means it's a seesaw, meaning these can't be both high at the same time, or they can't both be low at the same time. Okay, so action, stress, meaning the more you do things and take control over your life, the more you do things and complete them and learn that you can do them, the better off you're going to be. Okay, this is how you change. This is how you minimize anxiety and kind of reshape your life. Take control over your life. Because remember, the medial part of the prefrontal cortex, okay, the medial part is adaptive responses, and it leads the way for adaptive responses, not maladaptive. So we can talk about this area right here, this area right here, and this area right here, kind of being in control of leading the way. But all of these inputs are crucial because they're providing weight and information equation to these areas that's going to lead you to this. So in order to change and suppress anxiety, you're going to have to expose yourself to it. Now, how much? Like a little dose response. This amount of something gives me this response. You're going to have to just maybe slowly work into it. So repetition here is going to be crucial because this is the source of our actions. Repetition. Okay? So you can master it even. Eventually, this friction here is going to suppress, it's going to change. It's no different than a pro athlete or some sort of kind of expert, some chess player, some basketball player. It doesn't matter. They practice to kind of handle this, take control over things. So if you master it, you can shine a light on it. And I say that kind of purposefully because in the Bible or any religion, probably, light means various things. It's figuratively and there's kind of literally, spiritually. Okay? The light that you shine on things, you can see clearly. And then your worry vanishes. So, the whole thesis of this, part one and part two, and building your policy, building your life, your beliefs, your phenotype, your personality, is this: automate healthy things versus unhealthy things. If you have unhealthy things in life, if you have things you don't want to do in life, you're going to have to face them. Eventually, whenever you're performing this and kind of shifting these equations, you can start asking yourself, is it anxiety now or is it excitement? How do you know? The question that you need to ask yourself whenever you're feeling a little anxious, because anxiety and excitement have the same physiological responses. How do you know? How do you know if you're anxious or if it's excitement? It's the same thing in the body. You're just attaching different meaning of it based off of these networks. Specifically, these lower subcortical and these neuromodulators. You can change those. That's the beauty of this. And then you can start to build these adaptive responses. This wider range of skill sets that you can suppress the uncertainty and take control over the situation. Because likely it's meaningful to you, or you wouldn't be doing it, you wouldn't be thinking about it. Where do you spend your spotlight of attention? Okay. The more you do things, the more control you have over things. And then your policy will be developed based off of that because you're learning.